Hello, welcome to the Squarebase Podcast, the home of news, views and reviews for everything for the old world. I've been joined by my host Val, an arrogant, incredibly arrogant doofus.
Stupendously
arrogant doofus. And I'm your other co-host, Rob, currently in a legal battle with Games Workshop over how you say the word Vexilla. In today's show, we're in.
Yeah, I think that was a good beat.
It was a good beat.
That was a good beat. Also, I realized I was just doing my dancing on one foot thing, which just looks like I'm jiggling up and down. But that's all right.
What? Like, wait, you're doing dad at a wedding dance?
Yeah, I mean, I am a dad at a wedding now. So, I mean, they sent me the information pamphlets. I got all of I got everything I need to know. But yes, stupendous, the best insult I think I've ever received. Stupendously arrogant doofus. I just wanted to really pay homage to that, Rob. So I appreciate it.
Since we last recorded the podcast, or the show, or the YouTube video, whatever, I think this is like the first time we put the actual Squarebast YouTube video live. Like that's the big news for everyone. Yeah. Just for everyone to know, today we've got two news topics we're going to be talking through. We're going to talk about obviously the shooting phase. Very exciting. We've found some info. And Val has been doing some deep dive investigative journalism and may have blown this sucker wide open.
It's a deep dive.
It's a deep dive later. So get ready for that, which is going to be very fun. But yeah, we launched. I want to thank everyone who's joined the Squarebase exclusive Patreon. And
holy cow!
And I want to thank everyone who obviously has then also subscribed to our YouTube channel. It's pretty amazing, actually, the support we've got. How are you personally feeling about it?
How am I personally feeling? Well, I mean, the Patreon money really came in handy. You know, I figure, go get yourself something special, Rob. I was expecting some jewelry on you. Now that we're Patreon kings, and just rolling in it with all of the gracious and generous support. Keep it coming, folks. Keep it coming. Think of me like your televangelist pastor with really nice sneakers. Just ignore all the visual tells that suggest that, hey, maybe we should stop giving this guy money. No, just just fill that collection plate right up, guys. Also, I am no longer allowed to post about the show in the Old World Facebook group because, quote, I'm a shill. And I just want to tell everyone, we want to respect the moderators as much as possible and the people who called me a shill in the Warhammer, the Old World Facebook group as much as possible. Do not, whatever you do not post this show in the Warhammer, the Old World Facebook group. Do not post this show. If you see it's already been posted,
furious.
I'll be upset. I will be upset. And if you've seen it already been posted, don't post it again.
And sometimes
don't hashtag Squarebast.
Yeah, and sometimes because like links get auto modded, but pictures don't. Yeah, please don't screen cap shots and then say things like, I really enjoyed listening to these two. You can find their YouTube channel here. Two people quite clearly very excited about the old world. Please don't do that.
Absolutely.
I'd make me furious.
But honestly, it was taken down because somebody complained that we had a Patreon. Otherwise they said they didn't have a problem, but then they looked into it and they discovered that we were collecting off of Patreon. So getting those fat stacks, just remove them.
Well,
from our influence.
Let's be really clear. We've made it £86 a month at the moment. Let's be clear. I paid £140 for our podcast hosting, as well as I think like £36 a month on some what was it? Some emails and stuff. So right now we are negative money, which is fun. Not including. I've obviously sold all of the Honest Wargamer live streaming equipment to Squarebase. So actually, several tens of thousands in the hole.
Well, that was just a tax thing for you.
Anyway, let's move on from
liability off the sheet.
The important bit is we've got people.
This
don't post
Honest
it.
Wargame.
The important part is we've got people in the Discord now, like chatting away, which is fun.
Yes, and after repeated suggestions that I swing by and say, "Hey," I did. So there you go. Yeah. I've come down to the Discord. I've even popped by, which makes it I've probably now commented more than Rob.
Oh, excuse me. Can we talk about this? I'm going to show this immediately. This has to happen. Top of the show from our Discord. And we have got, check this out.
Breaking? We have breaking news?
Breaking. Look at this. It seems someone in our Discord is a bit of an artiste. I'm going to shout him out. Late Tide Miniatures has, behind the scenes, is a Bretonian that they have drawn.
They have drawn. Based on YouTube statistics, almost virtually assured to be a he. But yes, continuing.
Yeah, and has got shoes. So honest Wargaming fans hate this.
Pass.
But how cute is that? Drawing a picture of a lady of the lake.
That's awesome.
That's so fun.
Can we see more toes? I would much prefer that.
Everyone wants the tootsies. Anyway, thank you for subscribing to the YouTube channel. Nearly 1,000, which is great. Thanks for the support. And importantly, I hope you're square-based and enjoying the show. Val, how have you been in your square-based journey this week? Talk to me. How you been?
Fantastic. I've been keeping pace with literally responding to every comment. It's been so much fun. And painting up some man-eaters. I'm really close to being done the ogres. Rob, we might be slap chopping together when you first arrive in Canada next week. Just so you know. So yeah.
If people don't know what's going on, Val is based in Toronto, the home of just an incredible amount of mumble rappers, based on some YouTube videos I watched recently, and also some very freaky.
Oh yeah, yeah. Apparently, we'll poop on your chest.
Yeah,
apparently that's a thing us Torontonians are into.
Yeah, Toronto. But Val has organised the Square-Based GT, which is a Warhammer Fantasy Battle 8th edition tournament being held at the Mini Wargaming Bunker, also known as the F Bunker, and I'll be there next week for that hot goss, which is going to be very exciting. Which will be post the reveal that's going to be happening on Saturday, which will be the whole kit and caboodle, as I understand it. As I understand it, it's the whole thing. The whole shebang is going to be showcased. So pretty exciting.
Big bang, wham-a-lang. Cool. All right.
Yeah. So Games Workshop are doing a live.
Good thing we're going to spoil the whole thing right now.
Yeah. Games Workshop doing a big live reveal, live stream. We're going to be live streaming the reaction, but that's a different thing. Anyway, we could maybe talk about our hopes and dreams for that in a minute. But yeah, you've been keeping well?
Yeah, man. Life is great. Dude, I'm so excited about this. I was so worried that when we left the sweet warm bosom of Honest Wargamer streams that we would like lose all of our viewership, because that's what I'm about here. I'm about people having to listen to my opinions, and with it just speaking into a void. That's not good enough for me. I need that sweet feedback from those numbers ticking up. So when we moved over to the Square-Based channel itself. And a lot of people came along for the ride. 900 subs is crazy. That's crazy for a week. I mean, I know you've seen some crazy stuff, but you know, we can't all be the intern. 900 feels pretty good to me. We're gonna be monetized like next week. It's sick.
Yeah, we could make tens of pounds.
Tens more pounds, folks.
Tens more pounds.
Rob and I have been brainstorming merch. Like, we are going to just grift the hell out of this, because this is what you want to grift. You want to grift a game that is basically the Frankenstein's monster of a bunch of other 20-year-old games.
Yeah.
And
that's why we started.
That's where the money's at, guys.
That's why we started 12 months ago and started doing dwarven lore deep dives for 3 hours. Yeah, we were like, this is the big money. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is how it works.
This is what the algo wants.
Yeah, people will be excited about this shit. Right, okay, well, I'm glad. Well, so yeah, when I arrive, I guess we're going to be doing some painting, get some shit on the table. I'd love an intro game. That'd be really fun as well. I'd enjoy that. That would be fun. And then, yeah, I'll be playing some Square-Based GT in the F Bunker, which would be fun.
Yep.
I've got my first free weekend this weekend in 5 weekends, and then someone's given me a free ticket to an event, and I'm like, do I go play and just be truly destroyed by the time I get there next week, or I don't know. I'm tempted.
Hey,
yeah,
you've already availed yourself of our healthcare system once on a trip here. Why not? You know, we got your back. We still have a safety net.
That's
important. You can swing from the highest heights here in Canada with little fear of physical repercussions.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to coming over, and I'm glad you've been well. We should maybe just jump straight into the hot news, which is, I mean, hot as it can get, really.
Red hot.
Another red hot bit of news. Only 10 minutes. This is very professional. Before we got to the news, so we have got the info.
This is Square-based.
It's just Square-based. This is very good. Oh,
We have 1,000 subscribers.
so this is a bit non-Square-based. But can we talk about like this? Because we used to be properly Square-based on those Warhammer streams. We would talk
Right.
about the return of all the war criminals, which is super fun. I don't know if you've seen that there's an MCU style war criminal convention occurring soon.
I mean, I'm starting to get a little concerned. Is this also a Warhammer tournament? I did see the Home Secretary in the United Kingdom is into 40K, and I was like, well, that's appropriate.
But now, yeah, so he's back, right? But then also Tony Blair's coming back, and he's going over, which is very Bush. People won't know this. We used to do a show based around the Bush administration. Tony Blair's back, and he said he's going to be the peace delegate in Israel. So,
Oh, good.
I'm just waiting for, you know, the portals from MCU. I just want Bush
Yes.
coming through. That's all I want. I just want.
I think Tony was the Curb Your Enthusiasm guy for the Middle East. I think he's just raring to give it another crack. Good luck, Tone.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. Anyway, we'll
I'm
talk
glad-
about that
yeah.
later. We'll talk about that later because I wonder if the law writers for the old world have been able to write that in. Like, I would like it if there's some synergy there. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm hoping for. Anyway, right. So, right. So, the old world Almanack, talking about shooting. That was my segue.
How can we make Araby not jingoistic and offensive?
Let's ask
All right,
Bush.
now, stay with me with this for a second, lads. Stay with me for a second. We'll set it in the Middle East. All right, cool.
By the way, that was my segue into talking about shooting. I thought it was quite good, and artillery.
Rob, I just a point to the producer. On the previous one, you have me facing towards you, and now when we go to this one, now I got to do this. And it's just a pain in my dick.
For podcast listeners, if I was talking about the angle at which he's facing, I might be able to sort that out as we go live. But anyway, right.
All right, very serious, very serious. We got to blow this whole thing wide open. So let's get.
We haven't got time for this. Okay. Okay.
Right.
Right. So let's talk about it. The the old world shooting. An almanac. It's another almanac. We're deep diving. Okay, I'm not going to read the first bit.
Why do you think it's spelled with a K?
Almanac with a K?
Yeah.
Knack, as in like you'll get the knack of this.
Maybe
That's
it's just for the SEO. Maybe. Oh, new keyword. Got it.
Well, almanac is only theirs, but they will never use it again.
I mean, unless the Brits spell almanac with a K. I don't know if that's true. We spell it without the K.
Unless the books they're bringing out are going to be called almanacs.
That'd be kind of neat.
Like, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe the Tomb King book will be the Tomb King Almanac.
It could as well. I could see like maybe instead of ravening hordes, perhaps it'll be the almanac, like with all the army lists in there.
Okay, yeah, I think it potentially works. I don't know about you. Like, okay, right. So I'm going to read through this now, if that's cool. As with the other phases, the shooting phase is broken down into 4 steps, which you follow in turn for each unit. Declare targets, roll to hit, roll to wound, and remove casualties.
Seems simple.
Seems simple. No problem. Everyone and everything shoots in this phase, whether they're lowly peasant bowmen and barbarian javelineers, a macabre Cymrian screaming skull catapult, or a high elven mage manifesting a fiery convocation. Okay, so then we have our first snapshot look at
First question.
Yeah,
why have they renamed Marauders Barbarian Javelineers?
Ooh, great question. Marauders may be a little not square based. There could be that. Or barbarian javelineers maybe sounds a little bit like safer, maybe as a word. Also, maybe IP. Also, maybe Marauders are in Age of Sigmar, and if, as we know, SDS hate main studio. as they should.
As they should. We're with SDS. Where SDS stands, as you once said.
We're an SDS channel, 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
So we got our first look at a at a profile here. We got a longbow, range 30 inches, strength 3, no AP. It's got armor bane 1 and volley fire. And then we've got a Screaming Skull catapult, which is 12 to 60 inches, strength 4 or 8. That'll be to do with a template. AP 1 or 3, again, that's to do with the template. And then it's got a host, a cavalcade, a
bombardment even.
Of special rules, including bombardment, cumbersome, flaming attacks, magical attacks, move or shoot, multiple wounds, D3+1, Screaming Skulls.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, just before we go any further, how do you feel about that as a profile? Talk me through it.
Well, the first thing is strength decoupled from armor penetration. They brought in rending or AP as it is in 40K, and so now previous editions, basically the higher your strength, the higher your penetration on armor penetration was. It was 4 started at -1, and then it went up from there. Strength 4 was -1, went up from there. So this to me is kind of cool because now it gives them a little bit more ability to tailor AP. And so you can have a high strength, but maybe more blunt force trauma style weapon with lower APs. It also means that like armor, like just regular armor, will hopefully actually have a little bit more of an impact because if you had like a 5-up armor save, you were basically never getting it. If you were getting shot by anything strength 5 or whatever. So this could be cool.
I particularly like this. I like universal special rules. I think they're good. I think as long as they're done well, and like I think the problem with USRs maybe in the past was that they just weren't explained fully. Like there just was a lot of FAQs around some.
Not completely baked.
Yeah, they were half done. So this is awesome, and also like there's going to be a little bit of coloration probably to my thoughts on this week because I'm just coming out of having played 40K for the weekend at a 40K event. I was a spare player for the weekend, and one of my overriding feelings from the 40K event was that everything felt soulless. Nothing had any special rules really, and the units really didn't have an identity. I don't really think USRs add some identity because I like the idea of magical attacks. I like that you don't write some sort of magical attack for each type of weapon. Like, this has a different type of magical attack to that. It's just they're magical attacks. Make it up in your own mind what sort of magical attacks they are, right? So I love universal special rules. I'm still really hoping that we also see the units themselves have their own unique special rules for some flavor. But having come away from a 40K event, I think if I'd read this last week, I think we'd be like, whoa, there's a lot of universal special rules here. But having come away from 40K, I don't mind. I don't mind that. I'd like more, to be honest. I wanna get juiced up on some flavor. That's what I want. I want a Guy Ferrari this bad boy. Okay.
Yes. Well, I got some. There's some little morsels that they hint at that I think gives me hope for lots of flavor. So yeah.
Yeah. So, well, such as.
Well, when we get to it, I'll point it out.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, we'll move on from here. First, pick a unit and declare its target. A unit can only shoot if it has a ranged weapon, hasn't marched or charged that turn, and isn't fleeing or in combat. To shoot, a model must have line of sight to its target, and you can split fire. So in some cases, not every member of a unit can let loose. Models can almost always shoot only once, no matter how many attacks they have on their profile. Unless they have the volley fire special rule or stationed on a hill, only the front rank may fire. Oh! Oh my god. I'm so sorry. Like,
what?
Okay. In my mind, this is what happens. So immediately, now if you play a shooting army, you're like, I hope your terrain, the board has lots of hills, and you're like, and immediately we all say, have you tried putting a tray of square models on a hill? And they're like, fuck you, I want to shoot in 2 ranks. And you're like, the whole event is a disaster.
That's why if you're actually #SquareBast, you're gonna magnetize your guys and you're gonna get yourself a metal tray or put some sort of magnetic material on your plastic tray, and then those boys can probably, I'd say they can get right up to 45 degrees, bud.
Okay, I'm only letting this happen if you then also magnetize the tray and then the hill is metal. Like that's it.
That's literally how they stick to my carrying case. The tray is also magnetized, so I'm ready for this. I am magnet proofed. I'm ready.
Okay, all right. I think, we got loads to talk about. I'd love to have a deep dive on terrain on another show. I really would, because I've got so much to say about that.
We're gonna talk about it in the when we blow this thing wide open.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a disaster.
But like seriously, stay tuned, because I legitimately think that I've found the old world rules. Like, straight up. Anyway, continuing.
Models can almost always shoot only once, no matter how many attacks they have. Anyway, so on a hill. Oh, no. So only the front rank may fire. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I feel okay with it, as long as, like, basically any of the large, like, mass shooting weapon types and unit types, as long as they all have volley fire, I don't care. It's fine. Like, for example, handgunners. So if you can have 2 rows of handgunners, that makes narrative sense to me and looks cool as hell. And I would like that very much for dwarves and Empire and anyone else who can take them. So yeah, I think it's fine, as long as they don't they're not too scroogey with the volley fire special rule.
Okay, good. Once the target has been chosen, it's time to roll to hit.
Oh,
Here's the big news.
Damn it.
God damn it! Like there's a person coming to my Age of Sigmar event in like 3 weeks, and it's like their first full 2,000 point event, and they were messaging me and they've been DMing me a lot, and they do a lot of like TikTok content. They're quite a big TikToker for Warhammer, and they were like, I'm quite nervous, etc. And I was like, no problem. We have we have cheat sheets at the side and those other things. I just imagine if I was to send the ballistic skill chart to them, they'd be like, I'm not coming. I'm just not fucking coming.
Well, I guess it's a good way to protect the game from protect AOS from players leaving in droves, as if that would happen. Yeah, no, they're like, right, okay, this hit chart's a little complicated. What if we made it even more complicated?
I absolutely love.
But whatever.
I love your English designer voice. It's so good. Okay. Here's the big news. Old Style Ballistic Skill, or BS, as it's on the profile, is back, and it runs from 1 to 10. The higher your bullshit, the easier it is to bullseye your target. And once models reach a BS of 6 or more, they start earning re-rolls on their missed shots.
But wait, there's more.
There's so more. All right, okay. To determine whether a model hits its target, you must make a roll to hit. To make a roll to hit, roll a d6 for each model that is shooting and look up the target number needed on the table below. Any dice that equal or beat the target number shown after applying any modifiers hit the target. So, if you've got a ballistic skill of 1, you need a 6 to hit. But a ballistic skill of 5, you need a 2+ to hit.
So, this is the thing. Like, with all of these charts, basically, it just adds another degree of curve to the learning curve of the game, because these are all things that you will just have memorized eventually. The way ballistic skill to hit works is you take 7 and minus it from the ballistic skill, and that's how you get it. So ballistic skill of 5 from 7 is a 2 up. That's how you get it, right? That's the math. Now we all have to learn the reroll math, which maybe is the same. I have no idea. I don't even want to look at it. So,
do you know who is going to have to look at it? Tom, when we make him make an infographic for us.
Wait, I guess as long as you remember that it's ballistic skill 6, which basically was just wood elves and like bloodthirsters for some reason who didn't have a shooting attack. Yeah, like that's basically everyone over 6. The one thing that this does give me hope for is maybe we see more use of the entire characteristics chart, and actually on the wound chart, that's where I'm particularly hopeful. But yeah, just gotta remember, I get a 6 up reroll on the 2+ to hit, and then on the next chart.
Okay, yeah, I will. And also, just for newcomers, because we need to think about all the people that didn't previously play or weren't playing. So shout out to all of you who are watching the show. Like, yes, this does seem like it is confusing, and I do recognize the fact that you're going to be put off by it. But honestly, with a little bit of paper at the side of the table, most of the time you'll work it out. And also, you generally don't have a lot of... This isn't like firing a repulsor tank in 40k. This will be... You'll normally have a unit where all of the shots are doing exactly the same thing. Yes. And you won't have multiple different weapons. So it will be... You'll have to look it up a couple of times, maybe, if you don't learn it off by the top. But you won't have to look it up dozens of times because they're all different. So that's kind of a positive. And because it's universal, you have to do it all, so you might learn it. Okay, so then you got
Shadow Sun brings up a good point. I think the thing that will make this brain crampy is because there's tons of to hit modifiers in and so if you're like ballistic skill 7 and you're thinking about that reroll, but you get knocked down to ballistic skill 5, you're probably not getting your reroll. I would assume, as Shadow Sun was asking.
We've had a really good question in the chat, and I'd like us both to answer it. Val, I'd like you to go first. Could you explain the possible advantages of this system compared to a regular system like AOS, for example? Val first.
You just get more definition in the units. I mean, we already are on record because we're about to see rolling to hit on like ballistic skills that are more than 7+ to hit, which is hilarious. I think this is probably too granular. I don't think you need these rules. I think they are actually from a previous edition. I don't know. This might be a 4th edition to hit chart or something like that. Apparently, these rules did exist, or maybe even more recently than that. 6th or 7th edition maybe had the rerolls to hit. In 8th edition, you only had the ability to shoot beyond a 6+ to hit. So I just think it just adds granularity. It adds a bit of fun. And also because there are so many to hit modifiers throughout the game, having a higher ballistic skill just protects your ability to actually hit. So again, I'm just hopeful to see that more rank and file troops maybe at that ballistic 4 mark rather than the ballistics 3, which would be a 4, basically going from a 4 up to a 3 up. I would like to see more of, because even if you're shooting at long range in this game, I don't know if they say this here, but almost virtually you can be certain that if you're shooting at long range, which is like your full range, you're a -1 to hit immediately. So they're just trying to help people out with the universal rule.
Yeah, my answer to that question would be the game designers are quite clearly going for that. I think you hear this a lot. I don't want a goblin to be able to wound another goblin the same way they would wound a dragon. And I recognize that. We do play a game of abstraction, though. Like almost all of it is abstracted in many ways. And I think that there could be some more elegant writing that you could produce that isn't just numbers versus numbers or charts. People do love charts as well, so I want to shout out to all my chart gang in the chat and in the YouTube comments. But I'm a chart guy, Rob. I love charts. Give me more charts. But for me personally, this is terrible for onboarding someone, in my opinion. And
you just don't tell them. Honestly, I think this is such a minor thing that I think there's probably not going to be like core infantry or core there probably won't be many, if any, shooting units that are going to be ballistic skill 6. These are going to be for characters. It's going to come up very rarely. I mean even the normal to roll section. No, come on. That's 7 minus your ballistic skill. That's what you have to hit.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't think it's very good compared to modern game design. But I'm still here for it. It's great, and I understand why we've got it.
So in shooting, I think you could go to just a flat roll. I think in shooting, yes, and then modify it from there. However, I do really like it in the weapon skill, like it in the close combat to hit chart, which we'll see next week.
All right, perfect. Right, okay. Of course, it's not always easy. Okay, so we got the next bit. Sorry. BS of 6 or higher. If a model is BS 6 or higher, it gains a reroll should it fail to hit while shooting. The second roll usually has a lower chance of hitting on the table below the first target number given for the first roll, and the second is for the while re-rolling. So if you are ballistic skill 10, you have a 2-up re-rollable, basically. So 2-up and then followed by a 2-up. Whereas if you're a 6, then it's, you hit on a 2, and if you fail it, then you get a chance to roll on a 6. What are your thoughts on this, buddy?
Yeah, we just talked to it all. Again, I think it's a rule we can all probably just forget most of the time, because ballistic skill of 6 is high. So if you actually are hitting on a 2, and then getting that reroll, you may or may not remember that 6-up to hit. So I don't know. That 6-up reroll doesn't matter. I think it's kind of superfluous. I think what this signals is to the base. So and again, I think they are talking to an alienated group of players who haven't had a game from Games Workshop in a very long time. Namely, people who checked out in 7th edition, didn't even make it to 8th. So this is very familiar territory to them. This is comfortable to them. And then the wound shard is also interesting to me.
I just really struggle to picture that there is a horde of people who care so much about game design that they noped out of their hundreds of dollars, thousands of pounds worth of minis, lore, universe, and communities and friends that they were involved with, because there wasn't a chart. And that they are, because
there wasn't a game. There wasn't a game, right?
No, I agree with you.
They strangled it to, like, it was from these players' perspective. They strangled it to death throughout 7th with like very much higher powered army books that were taking over from the 6th edition books. Like there's just so much. There was just a lot of bitterness with how the game changed throughout 7th, and then once you got to 8th, it was a completely different. Well, not completely different game. It's still the same core principles. But 8th like was an additional turn off on that. So like I just think there were a lot of people who did nope out, and it didn't happen overnight. It happened over the course of a decade, really.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Well, now the charts are back, so get ready. The floodgates, local gaming stores bracing like it's a Black Friday sale. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like to the like disengaged players who I think will form a good chunk of this. And a lot of those people are playing 40K. They're playing other games, games, but a lot of them would have left the hobby into other stuff. They're going to see this and they're going to be like, oh, they actually did what I hoped they would do, what I hoped they were going to do in 8th edition. And what I hoped 10th, like basically Age of Sigmar was supposed to be this. It was supposed to be a return to form. 10th edition was supposed to fix all of the gross things that they did to their beautiful game. But instead they exploded it and told them to go fuck themselves. So, like, I think this is fan service is what I'm saying it is.
All right, fair enough. Importantly, I want you to know that I have no problem with it. I can utilize this quite fine. That's not an issue. And I quite like the rerolls thing. That makes sense. That does. Maybe slow it down a bit, but we'll see. Okay, of course, not always that easy. There are various negative modifiers you're shooting. It's a -1 to hit if you moved, you're at long range, you're receiving a charge, or a target has a partial cover. On top of that, a natural 1 always misses. While negative modifiers can stack past 6, you may find yourself having a 7+, 8+, or 9+ to hit, a natural 6 followed by another roll of a 4, 5, or 6. There's more old school goodness in the next step, which you can like.
I know. We can move on. Move on. Like it's honestly, they're rules that don't matter. That's the thing about them, is they're rules that don't matter. But the wound chart is interesting, so let's get to it.
In which you roll to wound by comparing the strength of the attack against the toughness of the target. There are even toughness caps. A strength 3 bow is simply too weak to harm a beast of toughness 7. So you can have immortal units once again. In the game. Pretty interesting. Okay, so you got the target's the target strength, or the weapon strength, and the target's toughness, and then another good old chart, as they say, which is fun. So how do you feel about the wound roll?
So first of all, I personally prefer a system of when you got wound charts like this where a 6 does wound anything. I like the puncher's chance. What it does do, though, is it opens up tough targets like monsters to weight of dice. So like just spamming, just spamming monsters to death and things like that. The thing is here is the chart kind of cuts off effectively at strength 9 and 10. Toughness 9 and 10 here. So basically, guys who can't see this, the to wound chart, obviously the best to wound you can get is a 2 up to wound. And then the worst to wound roll you can get is actually impossible to wound them. And that starts if you're strength 3, which is kind of your base strength in the game for the most part. That starts at toughness 9. So the amount of toughness 9 things that exist in the game as of right now are basically none.
Yeah,
I think effectively this is a nothing burger as far as like the fact that there are things that are impossible to wound because
there might be like spells and enhancements which are probably going to like up the toughness of a model, and that's your way of like,
or reduce strength,
or reduce strength, or both. -1 strength, +1 toughness. You might really start to change those numbers around.
100%.
And like you said, strength 3 is the base. So if I can make you strength 2, then my toughness 8 stuff can't be hurt. But again, you're probably right. There's probably a ton of stuff, like almost nothing that will ever reach into the untouchable category, which I think I agree with you 100% on that. Go on.
In 40K, like previous editions of 40K, this was always a bugaboo for me. Like they have, so this is the thing: you have a D6 system, which already limits your range of outcomes, and then they have a 10-point characteristic chart that they only use 4 points on. So in 40K, it used to be essentially the game was between toughness 4 and toughness 8. I guess there was stuff at toughness 3, but that belittles my point. In fantasy, really, you have stuff between toughness 3 and toughness 6. That's basically where it is. Toughness 7 is reserved for like shooting at war machines. A couple rare dragons might be up over toughness 7. But like, a steam tank, a big iron behemoth with lots of wounds, toughness 6. Toughness 6 was about as high as you got. And actually, it does a lot, I think, for the internal balance of the game. I really do enjoy that about Warhammer Fantasy Battles, is that like, is the tough stuff feels tough, and the like just the regular dudes feel like regular dudes. But I think having a 2-wound chart that does have some unwoundable things with weaker stuff, or things that get very hard to wound, maybe opens up the opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe monsters need to be higher up on this toughness chart. Like to give them a little more resiliency, a little more staying power, because monsters, I don't even think it's just 8th edition. I think monsters in general have always had a tough go. Like those single entity units have always had a tough go in the game.
I would agree, because really, like, a tray of models is effectively a single entity in many ways. All of the models are each individually just ablative wounds in what is a profile on a single unit.
The legendary Reese Richard Robbins was like, "Hey, do you ever like playing fantasy?" He's like, "No, man. The models are just wound counters," and I was wounded by that. I was hurt. And then I was trying to be like, well, isn't that the same in other games? And then my brain broke and I had to stop. But yes,
that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thanks for talking me down there as well. I think that's a really good point, that there's very little probably going to be unwoundable. Again, yeah. I don't really hate the way it's done in 40K. As an example, like Age of Sigmar and 40K do it differently. 40K, if it's equal, it's 4s. If it's anything that's not, it's it's 3s and 5s. And if it's half the strength, it's 6s. And if it's double the strength, it's 2s.
I love, so as far as a compromise between this chart and what AOS does, which is just you have a flat to hit and to wound. I think the 40K mechanic is really, really clever for like if you're married to a D6. Because what that allows them to do, which they only started doing in this recent edition, is then you can have, if you open up beyond toughness 10 and strength 10, now you can have real, like a good range of easily woundable things. You can differentiate between heavily armored targets and more squishy targets, and you can have specialized equipment for dealing with those things. Which again, I think that adds a layer of thought that you need to put into your army lists and things. Whereas with charts like this, and in previous versions of 40K, you were just looking for the right strength, the right strength to spam, to get your 5-ups to wound. And yeah, so like anyway, I really do like the 40K wounding mechanics. If you're married to a D6 system, this is also just fine by me.
Yeah, it does seem like it is actually, you can actually immediately create a reference for yourself. You don't actually have to look at the chart. It's effectively, if the weapon strength is the same as the toughness, it's 4, and if it's higher or lower, it's 4, it's 3s and 5s, and anything else it's 6 and 2s. So like it's quite simple. So if your toughness is 4, your strength is 4, then it's going to be 4s, and then if like 1 higher, it's 1 lower, and all that. It's like you don't need to look this up. Once you learn that quick bit, that's fine, very achievable. Doing the math on the fly every time, exhausting. Also, whenever I get asked in Age of Sigmar, a lot of people don't like the Age of Sigmar mechanic where it's like, this weapon always wounds on a 3, and when people ever ask me like, how does that happen? I go, fucking magic.
It's magic, guy. We're walking between the realms here, pal. Just roll some dice.
Yeah. Right, okay.
It's interesting that like AOS. It's interesting to me that AOS, that mechanic was done because they were trying to make a game that was just basically whatever. Like that kind of feels like what Jervis was aiming for with that game. What a way to go out. But they somehow that mechanic wound up working. You know what I mean? Like, I think like somehow like just having that blanket to hit and blanket to wound is effective for Age of Sigmar. Like it works.
Well, what's good is I never need to ask you a question.
Right.
I'm never constantly asking, what is your response to the thing that I'm doing? I know what my numbers are, and then you know I can ask you, are you minus to hit or minus to win or anything? They're like, no. I'm like, cool, and off I go.
And ultimately, that's how I guess you denote toughness, like varying degrees of toughness, is through your modifiers and your saves, right?
Yeah, it works. I think it works well enough. I think there are some cases that, like, I think people have got a really fair point about. I understand. I absolutely do. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway,
yeah, I think that basically the point I was trying to make is that, like, although AOS does seem to have that sort of cognitive dissonance in how the game works, it clearly works, and it works really well. Whereas, you know, this also works. I think we get hung up on it. Does. You know, like I think, yeah.
My one point from, again, 40k this weekend is watching someone shoot a repulsor at Mortarion, which was
weighted dice, yeah.
Which is like 70 shots or whatever it was, and I had a 2-up save and they had no AP, and I wanted to like cry, and I was like, and then like, okay, that's number 1 done. Let's go to number 2. I don't think there'll be as many dice in Old World, so I think it'll be fine.
Virtually guaranteed. Absolutely not, because like in 8th edition fantasy, like when I talk to fantasy players, they talk about how many dice you have to roll in fantasy, or 8th edition anyway, compared to previous editions, and it's comical to me because like the biggest handful of dice I may have ever picked up is 30. You know, when I'm rolling a hit with a hoarded up unit of halberdiers or something who are juiced up on some magic, like that's maybe the most I've ever had to deal with, and like that would get me a third of the way through. Like rolling a hit for my friggin' like a unit of orc boys, yes, you know, when I was playing 40k. So
that's so true.
Like relatively speaking, yeah, there's more dice than maybe some games, but certainly not nearly as dice heavy as 40k is on a good day.
All right, so it won't be Warhammer without a save and throw, which your opponent will make during this step. It's a familiar process. Compare the armor penetration of the weapon with the armor value of the model it's hitting. Light armor grants a 6-up save, heavy armor a 5+ save, which can be boosted with a shield, a barded mount, and certain spells and magical items. There is a small difference, however, as models can also have a ward save. This cannot be modified by armor penetration, and it is rolled for as a separate save made after the armor roll has failed. Okay? Which is fun. So you have like, so their ward save is the same as an AOS ward save or a 40k feel no pain, same thing. After, but it doesn't. But it is not done the same because it's not after damage is extracted. So it's armor save, ward save, then damage multiplication, or we don't know that from this yet.
Say that again.
So, like, so in 40k, as an example, if you failed either an invulnerable save or an armor save, then what you would then do is you would roll your damage multiplication. So, like, if it was damage 2 or if it was a d6, you would work out what the damage modifier amount was, and then you would be like, cool, I've got 6 feel no pains of a 5+.
Yes. Well, that's because...
Oh, God.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, like, I feel no pain, or like, what was, you came up with jargon for feel no pains, the after wound save?
DPR, damage prevention roll.
Damage prevention roll is just a dumb. It's not dumb. It's a response to the fact that you have a d6 to work with, and you have increasing strength, and you need a way to tune resiliency. So they originally would have armor and then an invulnerable save, which is something that you can always take if your armor save has been eliminated. And then they added feel no pain, which saves each individual pip of damage. On this, instead of having a feel no pain, they just make it so you always get your ward save, and the ward save is generally speaking going to be lower than your armor save. So I don't know. I like it.
Just to be clear, though, we as of yet don't know if the ward save will be done pre or post the damage multiplication.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It'll be pre. Almost certainly.
Okay, yeah. So that will be inherently different to how 40k and Age of Sigmar work, where fantastically Age of Sigmar has a ward save, which is done after damage multiplication. Love that.
Is funny.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah.
But yeah, like I just based on how the mechanics of this game are, like as far as I know, ward saves. Jack can correct me on that. Ward saves were kind of a rule that didn't really change ever, so I suspect it hasn't changed.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think it's changed as well, but it's just worth clarifying for people who may have never played this game yet. So go on.
Oh no, we have seen some influence from Warhammer Armies Project, and Armies Project does do interesting thing with ward saves, especially modifying ward saves and allowing them to stack. So currently in 8th edition fantasy, and I'm assuming previous versions, I don't know that. if you had somehow access to 2 ward saves, you would just take the highest. Whereas in Warhammer Armies Project, they allow you to actually stack those things. Ward saves would stack in the case of magic resistance for 8th edition. But for the most part, it would just be, your best ward save is what you got.
Yeah, okay. And I just want to be clear to a couple of people in the chat. Pershaw saying that this is a bit confusing. Him as mainly a 40k player, that the ward save being after an armor save and not simultaneous with an armor save as you would in 40k. So there's it's worth just kind of like clarifying that for people, because I think otherwise that's actually more confusing than it seems. The final step is to remove casualties and take panic tests where necessary. This is super simple. Remove 1 model for every wound caused, unless the target has more than 1 wound. You know the drill. You need to take a panic test if the shooting has killed more than a quarter of the models in a unit, but we'll get to what happens in another article. You know the drill is
again, it's fan service, man. They're talking to they're winning back hearts and minds here. Like, guys, it's just like you remember. It's a warm embrace.
They literally are like, oh, you might be interested in this new thing. Well, you aren't part of it, so you can't be in. Yeah.
Well, it's also, this gives it an air of exclusivity. There's something to be had there. That's all of, like, people complain about gatekeeping in Warhammer. Warhammer is the gatekeeper. Like, the game, like, even if you pick AOS 40k, soon to be old world, it is a near impossible task to get into this. The fact that people do is mind-boggling to me, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it is hard. I think the fact that it is hard is part of why people work so, like even casuals, to put an army on the table. I've said this so many times. It's an insane amount of effort for even just someone to have a game. So I don't think complexity is as big a deal as it's made out to be. Just because the friggin' assembling a model is complex if you've never done it before.
We can talk about this another day, I agree. All right, there are plenty of weird and wonderful shooting units in Warhammer. The old world and a plethora of special rules go with them. The big beasties have breath weapons, some skirmish cav have fire and flee, while dwarven iron drakes have cinder blast bombs that can quick shot. Wouldn't you like to know? As for the magic, there are 2 categories. Oh, should we just talk about that for a second?
We can talk. Actually, we'll touch on fire and flee later on when we blow this thing wide open. But yeah. Basically, these are like, those are charge responses. Quick shot might also be a charge response, or an ability to probably use your weapons when you're being charged if they're really close to you. Normally you can't, based on previous things. But here we go. This is actually, we're getting into some of the cool reveals that are subtext on this next part.
Okay. As for magic, there are 2 categories of spells to be fired off in the shooting phase. Magic missiles and magic vortexes. Oh, no.
Trigger warning, Rob. Trigger warning.
Human wizards use battle magic. For instance, can blast off a quick fireball, my favorite spell in all of fantasy. While those blessed by the dark gods may use the law of demonology to conjure a vortex of chaos. Val, hit me with the hot gossip on that sentence.
So, the fact that we see something called demonology, which could be for Warriors of Chaos, or it could be specific to, this one's probably specifically for Warriors of Chaos, just gives me a lot of hope that we're going to see custom lores of magic for armies that don't have their books yet. So because, again, like, so much of faction's identity does come from its lore of magic, specifically, like, I'm thinking of the vampire counts. If vampire counts don't have their own custom lore of magic, they don't get to do a lot of the fun stuff that we know vampire counts for, like, rezzing zombies and doing stuff like that. Van Hell's Dance Macabre, which has been in the game forever. So like, this gives me such relief to know that, we're not getting fully stripped down, like truly get you by list. We're probably going to get something that's interesting. Thanks to all the universal special rules. I know what you were saying there, Rob, about the 40k stuff being bland. But if you have a big enough roster of special rules to draw from, you can make the units individualized and interesting. So again, this was just a nice little indication. And here's battle magic, which is what they call for humans. I think they're speaking specifically of Empire mages here. And there's your answer. This is the replacement for the colleges of magic, because it doesn't exist yet. So battle magic for your battle mages.
Yeah, and Law of Demonology referencing each book having its own lore is going to be super exciting. And I did say this, like, I want a deck of spells. I want that. I
Yes,
want a deck of
100%.
spells. I want that. I want to drop a spell card down, 100%. Like, it's crazy that they don't realize that we want that. Like, if I walk into a store, you can sell me a deck of spell cards for casting spells I'll never cast so easily. It's unbelievable how easy you can sell
for armies I'll never play too, like 100%.
Yeah.
There's just something great about it. But I think they got better at that. Like, they love selling the little card things. Whether they keep them in stock is a different story. Okay. Also, something that's been noted, I think, widely is just the power level of these two particular spells seems to be fairly low. Although Fireball, 2d6 strength, 4 hits ain't nothing because they hit, right? So like that's the equivalent of like 14 shots at BS4. But the AP of Dash actually is a nerf to the Fireball because previously a strength 4 had a -1 AP. So it is a little bit less effective than it would have been in previous editions.
So as I understand it, because I've been lucky enough to have some conversations with some people who might know some elements, spells are not going to be the game swinger that they were, which is a huge boon, absolutely massive. Like, that's still fine. Like, the idea of I like the idea, actually, arguably, of there being more magic. I'm not really one for busy work, and that's kind of wounding on 6s is very busy work. Hitting on 6s, re-rolling so that I hit on 4s to. And
I'm probably just not going to remember. Yeah.
It's a lot of busy work. But Fireball, like, I like the idea of a couple of mages throwing spells that do something, but not loads. I'm very keen on that. I think the battle shifting just because a level 4 magician did a thing. So
also, there's a lot of design space between the 8th edition Magic that we saw, which was, guys, like, there's probably no equivalent in any Warhammer game to the power of Magic in fantasy battles. We're talking about like, for example, the Vortex, Purple Son of Xerxes, which I know exists in AOS. I don't know what it does there, but in fantasy, if you cast the big one, it was a large template, so the pie plate, which is about that big. The size I'm holding up in the air, podcasters, is about yay. And it would kill you, remove you from the game if you failed an initiative test, which is where you have to roll below your characteristic value. Well, a lot of people out there are, initiative 3, 2. So if you hit a bunch of ogres with that, who are multi-wound models, they would all just get sucked down a hole and die, or at least 2/3 of them will. So yeah, I think that was actually kind of added because Fantasy 8th edition, quite frankly, is Apocalypse for fantasy. So I think they had the big kill spells because they had big units of ranked infantry. We're probably not going to see the same thing in this one. Yeah, my call for the OP element of this game is 100% going to be cavalry. Get ready with your horses.
Okay. I just like the idea of casting spells, but it being like I do a fireball. I killed 3 goblins with a fireball. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely 11 out of 10 stuff. Happy with that. All right. So
and then just also like on the topic of this, I'm really curious to see how how do you select your spells? Do you get a choice? I hope they don't like come attached to a mage. I hope you still get that Swiss Army knife value out of Magic, because that's the other benefit to them, was that it could do a bunch of different stuff. And with the casting in different phases, if you have a spell that works in that phase, are you always allowed to use it? Like say you have a level 4 with 4 different, like maybe you're allowed to take one from each category of type of spell. I don't know. I'm curious to see how they actually do work with the the distribution of like what each mage is able to do based on how good they are at it, etc.
Yeah, that would be really fun to learn. I agree with you 100%. Because you do want a magician like this, a famous magician, I don't know, like Teclis or something, to actually like have some like impactful, like you want them to be impacted in the game. Like a level 1 wizard just doing something, like you don't want it to change the shape of a game like it previously could, but you do want Teclis to have that, and balancing something between those two, fairly tough, I imagine. Also, if output isn't the main benefit of wizards, my assumption is going to be the buffs and debuffs are going to be the main purpose of a wizard, which is cool. All right,
and I think that is ultimately cooler, right? That they are a force multiplier, that they are either hurting your opponent or helping your guys so that they are either less or more effective in battle. I think that is a really cool way to do it.
Agreed. Agreed. All right, so then we got the demonology spell Vortex of Chaos, which is cast on an 8, which is tough to do, range 15, and remains in play, and you place a small 3-inch blast template, so its central hole is within 15 inches of the caster, and while in play, the template is treated as dangerous terrain. The template moves d6 in random direction during every start of the turn subphase for any friend or foe the moving template touches, so for d6 plus 1, strength 3 hits with an AP of dash. So again, doesn't do very much.
So the only thing I would take, yes, that's kind of a womp womp spell, but it remains in play, so it's going to be there being annoying, so that's cool. It can be placed within 15 inches of the caster. That's not how Vortexes used to work. You used to actually have to sort of like shoot them out from your unit, which could lead to bad things. But the biggest thing here that this talks to is, and I guess Screaming Skull Catapult would have pointed this out already, but we have templates back, which we haven't touched on. And I think that's interesting. I personally don't have any problem with templates. And maybe we'll have some cool widgets for you guys to make templates easier. But also the mechanics of that particular vortex, where it's if it touches the unit, then you get a d6 plus whatever. I wonder if that's how maybe they handle templates. So the template is more about the scatter. If it touches the unit, then it's a randomized dice roll for how many actual hits it causes. That could be an interesting compromise on keeping templates, but reducing some of that, argument over how many models are covered.
Oh, that's a nice idea. So if the template touches, any element of the template touches, it also kind of like makes sure that it's not too effective. Like if you have a bunch of ogres, they're going to take, I don't know, a unit of 12, let's say. Like that previously with a template, you would hit 12, but like with goblins, same space, maybe 60 or whatever, you'd hit a lot is kind of the point. And that's a way that would be really nice. That would be a super elegant way. So what we're trying to say is, and what Val was just saying, is you're going to just reduce down how impactful discussing it through is. Does the middle hit? Yes, you take this many attacks from the middle. Does the side of it hit? You take this many hats. I love that. That's great, because honestly, I groaned a bit reading about templates. I did.
Yeah.
That's a bit much.
Yeah. So again, I think that to me though, like we were talking about, to me the most I guess contentious part for me was always the scatter. So like when you actually place a template, generally speaking, like say it's a stone thrower or something like that, and there's a scatter roll. There's basically a dice with a bunch of arrows on it, and then another dice with some numbers on it. And it will go in the direction of the arrow that many inches. But getting that accurately so that it's, actually where it says it's supposed to be on the dice is sometimes very annoying, and can be contentious if it's a high, leverage moment. Whereas now, if it's just the template just has to touch, well, then it's much less of an argument, because, very rarely is it going to be very, very close to not touching, right? So it's either going to pretty much be on or off, and that's a fairly agreeable thing. So anyway, yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. I think that's it for the article. So a lot revealed there, and I would like to take this opportunity to shout out everyone in our YouTube comments and podcast people. Podcast should be going up like this afternoon. We're sorting it. Well, we're going to sort out it a little bit more. So if you do happen to be listening to a podcast, do leave some comments, because I am interested in what everyone's thoughts are on this. And the article, like you pointed out, is clearly talking to a pre-existing fan base, not really necessarily trying to sell it to a new fan base, which is a very interesting kind of pitch. And I do wonder if there are people who are like, I'm really excited about this, Rob, and I'm a new person. Odd they're not talking to me. Or, Rob, I'm an older person. This is exactly what I wanted. Or actually, like me, as someone who played this game previously, some of these bits are a bit like, I liked it. But templates, as an example, if you give me a better version of templates, I'll be over the moon. Yeah, because that was an issue. That was a point of contention between two people in the past, and I didn't enjoy it. So I would like that not to be a thing in the future.
I mean, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. First time you play with templates in a long time will obviously be at the Squarebase GT. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I tend to. The other thing is, unlike 40K, where you have dispersed units. In fantasy, if you have a template right over a unit, it's hard. Is it 10 guys or is it 12 guys? It's always going to be a lot of guys. So I feel like I don't argue for every single one as much, or at least I don't feel the need to. Like if I'm getting hit by a template, I'm already like, oh, that's bad. So like, like arguing for the margins for me is not something that I usually die. It's not a hill I'm usually needing to die on. But this all is we're talking about previews that they're dribbling out to us. But we're about to reveal the entire game. Are you ready, Rob?
I'm ready. Also, pinch of salt as that being true.
We are going to tell you actually. Pinch of salt, sure, but I think the fundamental concepts that we're about to go over are virtually assured to be what we're going to see, because a lot of the naming conventions are the same. And what I'm referring to here is on the I think for the most part I got this from the Old World Facebook group, where once again, please do not share this show, do not post this show there. If you see it already posted, don't post it again. Don't hashtag things square bast. Actually, people did spontaneously post this show, and I really want to thank anyone who did that. That was really, really nice. Those ones didn't get taken down. So don't post this show. It might get taken down. Besides that point, they love speculation in the Old World group. So let's speculate a little bit, because someone pointed out some similarities. I think it was around... I can't even remember which specific rule they were talking about, but they were talking about Warhammer Ancient Battles, specifically the second edition, which was released in 2010, which is
who wrote
roughly that? This is written by Martin Gibbons. How do I know that? Martin Gibbons, from what I can tell, did this and not a lot of other credits for GW, because they folded this part of the design studio almost immediately after releasing the second edition of this. This is when they're reducing specialist games. So 2010 is about when they pack up all of the subsequent games. So the Warhammer Ancient Battles is largely, as I would say, derived from 6th edition, but with a lot more detail, specifically around a lot of the things that we're starting to see. So actually, we can go to the second slide first.
Well, before we do that, I'd like to hit an intro, because I think there's something really fun here. Because what Val basically might be saying is that, because we know that there's only a singular game designer, maybe with some addendum help, but only one. And shout out to him, them, they, she, whoever, for doing a great job of creating like a game that we're about to be excited about. But here's where it gets really exciting. Is Val about to blow the lid off a plagiarism case so big that maybe he himself is about to cancel the Old World? Is the thing that Val is the most excited about in a very long time, has he done such due diligence in his research that Games Workshop are about to pull the product due to plagiarism, which Val has uncovered?
One of the things that has been driving me crazy around the discourse of this game is that a lot of this, like, I fully believe, like, most of what we're wondering about is already out in the open. So like base sizes, and I think I'm gonna release a standalone video about base sizes sometime soon, before they're actually revealed, because like we can look at the pictures of the armies that they've shown and we can see what friggin' bases they're on, and yet the groupthink is so aggressively anti-speculation. So S my D, we're gonna speculate the hell out of this, and I would bet that we're gonna be right in the wheelhouse. So yeah, if you can go to the second slide just for a quick second, then we'll come back to this one. The reason why I want to start with marching column.
Okay.
So you went too far.
Okay.
Oh, nope. Then I didn't arrange them correctly. Anyway, marching column, obviously, guys, we've seen that already, where you can reduce ranks by 1 to triple your movement. I maybe didn't put it in. I screwed it up. Okay. So you can basically triple your movement. It's different than a march move. It actually requires you to change your ranks and things like that. It is fundamentally the exact same in Warhammer Ancient Battles. So that is to me a sign that maybe we've taken some things. We're also going to notice that the exact same wording is used for the name of these rules. So that means that the substance of the rules might change, but certainly if the name is exactly the same, to me that's an indication that they probably use these things for inspiration. So if we're at the first one here, this is basically the ability to maneuver or change ranks. These are additional things that you can do in Ancient Battles that maybe has never really appeared in Fantasy. You've usually had reform moves, which take up all of your movement. In Ancient Battles, you see opportunities to use a portion of your movement to either do an about face and walk in the other direction, or to add or subtract ranks. For example, for half your movement, you can add or subtract a rank, whereas in fantasy battles, you would have had to like use up all of your movement to do that. They also, they also have reforms in this. But something here that they've indicated in I think the first article was the difference between open and closed formations. And on this one, they describe what makes an open formation, what an open formation does, and what it allows them to do. That's still the first one. You can go up, back up to the top, tippy top. This isn't it. There you go. So on the left side, basically allows them to do 2 of these about face maneuvers per turn for free. So that means that an open order formation, which is still in ranks, it's not a skirmishing unit, is just more nimble. It's more mobile. It can move over. It also has benefits to going over terrain, for example. But specifically, this unit could turn around, walk backwards, and then turn back around again to face the enemy. So essentially, it can back up from an opponent, which is a super useful thing. And then if we go down, especially around marching columns, there's been a lot of like, well, what does it matter if you have a marching column? And the reason why people are saying that is because, generally speaking, if you're in a unit, if you're in that 4 wide formation, and then you want to charge something, you have to get out of the marching column, which would be a reform, which would be all your movement. So as it stands right now, it looks like if you're in marching formation, well, it's going to take you 3 turns before you can charge something, because you're going to march in the first turn, you're going to reform in your second, and you're going to charge in your third. However, there's some design space here, and not just the pictures, the text as well. This is going over basically a unit special rule called drilled, and this is pure speculation here, but this just shows you the types of things that they can do. And this is an example of a unit. These are for usually Roman troops, and it's their ability to, for example, turn on the spot and charge, or reform and basically change their shape, while still being able to do things in that phase with less penalties. So the reason why I'm highlighting this is that like something like a marching column, yeah, seems lame. Who's ever going to use it? Well, could be very specific. It could be different units have different abilities that make them more disciplined, more able to move in formation. And the drill troops are also a feature of closed order formation. So a closed order means you're tighter together. You can work with your homies to do things, and you also are able to just be more nimble and do more maneuvers. So I could see this being a feature of your less chaotic troops. Maybe some of maybe the great swords might be a drilled unit, or have something that might call back to this style of a special rule. Any thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, this is great. None.
Is it though? I don't know. Is this interesting?
Yeah, it is. It is. For prefix, I think I think we got there towards the end. At the start, we're definitely talking about the formations and movement of troops, which is coming from how it's written in this game, and then how it might impact what it looks like in the old world, which would be good because yes, movement was quite singular in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Like you said, you would reform and you were basically ineffective for several. Like, if someone ever just arrived behind your army, you're like, well, they're never getting charged. Like that's not something that my army is capable of doing because it would cost too many turns to do it and achieve it. So having that changed and look at this and get some more options feels really nice.
Or maybe the ability of a character nearby. This is also most of these like a drilled formation or the ability to reform in this game is heavily dependent on the musician. So a musician is a special unit upgrade for just about everything. If you have that, it opens up your ability to do more cool maneuvers and stuff. So we can keep going. This is speculation, so we can keep going.
No, but I love that. I do love that. I like that it's more impactful. I really do. Movement's the most important stat, and I do think movement was maybe one of the weaker elements of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So
it certainly didn't. For something as they certainly weren't using a lot of what they could have used, and that's why I find the hints at some of this stuff being picked up and put into Old World is kind of interesting because I think it could make for a really crunchy movement phase. So the next one.
So there's a question in the chat. Adding musicians and banners going to cost points. Yes, normally unit upgrades cost points. For instance, you'd pay for like heavy armor, and everyone would have heavy armor. There'd probably be a different in weapon options in points cost as well. And paying for like a command group is normally something people would do, which would be fun. The next page I've got for you.
In my point to shelf loathing, it says if it takes 3 turns to marching column, reform, and charge, then why not just remain in fighting column? My point is that that's what everyone's assuming, but I suspect very strongly that elite troops will have the ability to change their order and to change their formation a lot more nimbly than, say, just your regular conscripts and stuff.
I would love that, if I'm honest. I would like it if my blocks of troops, especially my elite troops, were much more competent at being able to like maneuver around the battlefield. And it also would change up that very linear deploy, go in a straight line game, which Warhammer Fantasy Battle often was.
Yes. This feels a lot more dynamic. Like this game in particular with the maneuvers that they allow feels a lot more dynamic. So this is combat results bonus. So in fantasy, essentially when you're fighting a combat, it's not about like who entirely like wipes out the other unit necessarily with actual attacks and stuff. It's about who is determined to have won the combat. And at the end of it, you add up how many people you killed, and then you give yourself various bonuses. Most of these would be very familiar to anyone who's played Warhammer Fantasy Battle, but I wanted to point out, because a lot of people are wondering, what does close order mean? We talked about open order. It means you're probably more of a nimble thing. You might be able to do more maneuvers for free without movement penalty. In this case, close order receives, just for being close order, a bonus to their combat. So that means if you're fighting a closed order unit and they have a standard, immediately they have, even if they haven't killed anybody, they've scored 2 points for the combat result. So a close order unit is just a bit more of a tank.
So just again, for people who are new, what normally happens is when 2 units are fighting, you take the number of models that have been killed for both sides, for both like units, if you will, and then you create like effectively a combat result. It's kind of like like a boxing match. This is the scores. This is how you did. But other things, as Val just pointed out, like having an additional rank of dudes, having a standard would give you a bonus points, and then that would be how you would gear towards like winning the combat in some cases. But being a closed order from this rule set at least, or the other rule set, not what we know so far, might give you +1 to that as well, which is fun. That's cool. Yeah, I like the idea that the different orders are going to give you bonuses, especially like some spearmen having a closed order. Obviously, they're less maneuverable, but they've got +1 straight off. That feels like a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And then can we just scroll down a little bit on this one, just in case I think that was what I wanted to call out in the combat results. There's an interesting concept. Again, this would only be for the fantasy heads out there, of momentum. So momentum is if you won the previous combat, but nobody broke from it, like you didn't, like the combat continued, you also get a +1. So that means that if you're winning, if you're winning in subsequent rounds, it becomes easier to break your opponent. Which is kind of neat. I have no idea if that one comes in. It was just a cool mechanic that I liked. And we're also going to get into give ground soon. So if we go to the next one.
Okay. So these are charge decorations is where I'm at next.
Oh, charge decorations. Okay, cool. Oh, right. I'm watching on delay. Sorry. That's why I'm a little, the only thing I wanted to look at here was in charge. One down.
It won't work like that. Just tell me which page you would like me to go to.
There you go. Charge responses. There we go. Charge decorations. Here we go. Charge responses is what I found interesting here, because it defines a couple things. One is counter charge. So so we've seen that some quick units, I think the way they phrase it is, some fast units can respond quickly and counter charge an opponent. In Warhammer Army Battles, it's literally called counter charge. It applies to cavalry and light chariots. And essentially it allows them, as some have speculated, to meet a charging unit sort of in the middle. So if they're being charged from more than half of the opponent's movement, they can actually sort of come out to meet that opponent, and they also get the benefits of charging. So if they get like an attack benefit, or if they're knights and they have lances, they would get extra strength. So it allows them to sort of intercept, and I think that's what the cool thing about countercharge is for me, is that if a unit sort of sallies forth from your line and stops someone from charging like right up next to you, then that gives you a little bit of an ability to maybe maneuver and hit someone in the side. So again, cavalry with a very interesting benefit in this rule set. Of course, it's very possible countercharge is a rule that's given to not just cavalry. We're in a magical setting, not a historic setting. But that seems to be sort of, I would bet that is the mechanical concept that we're talking about. It's not that a different unit can charge. It's that the target unit is able to come out and actually take some of the table, take some of that charge distance away from the charging unit, and then also get a bit of a benefit. And then at the bottom here, we have fire and flee, which they referenced in the shooting one. Fire and flee essentially is just for sort of fast, skirmishy troops. I think for the most part, I don't know who it will apply to, but in this case, essentially they can shoot and then run away, but it just reduces the distance that they can flee. So, for example, an infantry unit would, generally speaking, flee 2d6 away from a charge. In this case, they would only flee d6. So you probably would hope that, the person's already charging you from a long way off before you use this. But this is sort of maybe the idea of what fire and flee is all about.
So we think that a lot of the keywords that we're seeing, a lot of the things we're seeing in the article are just rules that might have been lifted directly from this document. And these might
certainly,
be
I would go so far, clearly at the minimum inspired by. So, for example, marching column, in this game, it's actually 3 wide is the marching column. But in this game, it's based on the 6th edition rule set, which was basically a rank was 4 models, not 5. So it makes sense to me that a marching column now in Old World is 4 wide because that's how you lose your rank bonuses. But I would say because they are literally using the same names for these things, I would suspect at the very least, countercharge may not work exactly mechanically as it does here, but I suspect the idea that you are coming out to meet your opponent and getting the benefits of charging is what we'll see. I
mean, it's hot gossip if they're identical.
Identical, I don't know. They couldn't be identical just because this is written like a traditional Games Workshop piece of design. So it's very conversational at times. They explain the rules and the idea behind them a lot, rather than just telling you how it works. But yeah, so I would say certainly inspired because they're just literally using the names of these things. So we can go to the next slide.
So the next slide is about counter charges. It gives you an indication of what Val was talking about. What I am going to do for everyone who is listening to this at this point, I'm going to include a link in the YouTube and also podcast to this PDF that Val's made, so you can kind of peruse it yourself, share it with your friends, etc., which would be cool. Which I'll do. The next one is about giving ground, moving units that give ground.
So give ground, this is something that was referred to in the first time we heard anything about the rules at all in a developer diary, I want to say in the summer or just before the summer. So give ground to me was always kind of confusing because it was, if basically the idea is being pushed back, I guess is actually how it was phrased in that developer diary. But the idea is if you lose combat, instead of breaking and running away, which can result in you also getting chased down and killed, you just move the unit backwards in the formation. They just give ground. And I didn't understand why that would be. And this gave me some insight as to maybe how it will work in Old World, where it's a benefit for large units. So essentially, if you're a large unit that has lost combat, instead of just piecing out and getting run down, say you outnumber, maybe you've been attacked by some elite cavalry and you're a big brick of spearmen and you've got 30 models in there, they've killed 5. There's 25 guys to the horses and you've lost and now they're going to run you down. Well, instead of that, they can actually just get pushed back. So this goes from being why would I want to do that to a benefit of larger units. And the reason why I really think this is how it's going to be is because in previous games, I don't know if they had, I think they had something called unit strength, which was kind of a complicated rule to benefit larger units and larger models so that they couldn't be, that scenario didn't happen as often. I'm not sure exactly how it was used. It's used in Warhammer Armies Project as well, but it was an additional stat for the unit that sort of gave you another thing to calculate when you were doing your combats. Whereas this is just basically if you outnumber your opponent by a certain margin, 2-to-1 after casualties, you don't necessarily break, you just get pushed back. And I think that is a really cool way to benefit large units that have a lot of mass, and is also to me kind of evocative. It's kind of narrative. Maybe they lost. So yeah, so I was just going over giving ground, or I think they call it pushback or something like that. And again, wrapping my brain about why would this be a good thing? It's not a good thing for the charger. It's a good thing for the defender, because if the charger gives ground, and then sorry, if the unit receiving the charge gives ground, now, I mean, there might be units on either side of that. So if you can imagine, like 3 units together, you charge the middle guy, or even at either side. If they give ground instead of breaking, well, now that unit that charge is going to be wide open in the flank for one of the supporting units to come in and charge. So that's why giving ground be good. Whereas if the unit breaks and the charging unit overruns, they're like in its cavalry, for example, they're going to get a 3d6 move, and they're going to be able to move past that unit and no longer necessarily be in danger of receiving a charge from a supporting unit. So a pushback is actually a potentially very nice defensive buff, or like the ability to outnumber your opponent and be pushed back instead of breaking and fleeing is a nice defensive buff for holding the line.
Again, that's also some more minutiae in movement as well. Like, because units would often just get locked in perma battle in the middle of the board until someone ran away. You would just swinging dice at each other each turn. This adds more nuance into those phases, which is really nice, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm. Redress ranks. This is something that was referred to, I think, maybe in the movement article. I'm not sure, but it's essentially a form of combat reform. So essentially, this is after if you've won the combat, you can essentially just and say you're in a narrow formation, but you're fighting something in a wide frontage. There's actually a picture of this particular example on the screen. You can add 2 ranks, or you can move your guys into position. The thing that this hints at to me, that they have it in Old World, actually has more to do with how in Ancient Battles they remove casualties from multiple combats. So this is going to get a little wonky, but essentially, if you have like 3 bricks, right? Like, so you have one unit that's been charged in the front and one unit that's been charged in the side. The way it works right now, I'm pretty sure, is that you just, no matter what the casualties are, you're going to remove the ranks from the back of the unit. Mm-hmm. So if you're the flank charging unit, as you kill ranks, you actually have less guys to fight. That makes any sense?
Yeah.
Whereas in in Ancient Battles, and maybe in previous editions too, this time it's completely dark to me, you actually remove unengaged models. So if you have a unit in your flank, that unit, like that file of 4 or 5 guys that are fighting the dudes to their right, would not be able to be removed as casualties until everyone else had died. So you can get like these like Tetris shapes, like these L's, or like if they were on all sides, they would hollow out like a U, which is kind of cool to me. Like the formation is fighting on that line, right? Like they're battling, they're trying to hold the line against their opponents, and so obviously the people who are actually at that point of contact, they aren't removed as casualties because someone's always going to be stepping up into that gap. And what the redress ranks allow you to do is move people into places where there aren't anybody right now. So again, I don't know. Redress ranks might be actually function mechanically in Old World like the old combat reform, which just let you move your dudes around, or it could be something more similar to this, a little more specific.
I wouldn't mind having some control over removing slain models and giving myself like an advantage at that point, specifically because, again, that's a level of ability and skill expression versus like knowing where to remove models from in some of the other game systems has always been a skill-based decision. It's a decision point that really reflects you understanding what's happening in the game. And while I agree with you, it's quite cinematic having everything pinned in. It does feel like that gives you very little opportunity to have anything else happen in the game. That's like you're just locked in there, and it's just happening.
You were already limited in that fashion, just because you're always locked in combat. You can't leave, but can you? As I'll maybe hint at later. Also the reverse of that in this scenario, like Sarah, in the case of a rank and flank game, is that by removing those ranks, well, that flanking attack, which is supposed to be really useful for you, you have less and less models available on that frontage. This might be solved immediately just by the fact that I think they've said that everyone in the front rank fights regardless of frontage. So we might not need this kind of granular detail, but they have referred to redress ranks. So it might be a mechanic like this, or it could just be a new term for something like a combat reform.
Okay, interesting. Then we talked about line of sight. Oh dear.
So in the shooting, the reason why I brought this up is because in the shooting article, they refer to needing to be in line of sight. And Rob was kind of heartbroken about that because there are two things that there's some kind of major changes in game design that came from Games Workshop games, I would say, in the 7th to 8th fantasy transition, and then also in the 5th to 6th 40K transition. And that was leaving abstracted line of sight and going to a true line of sight situation. So if you can get down, if you can see it, you can hit it, basically. And because they reference line of sight in the shooting article, I don't think they say true line of sight. They say line of sight. I wanted to bring this out because this is just an example of how line of sight works and interacts in this game, which is very heavily abstracted. So yes, you do need to be able to see the models you're shooting at. However, what can stop you from seeing the models are things as simple as boulders on the field, intervening forests, hills. All of those things can remove your line of sight. Elevated positions also are abstracted. So if you're on any type of a hill, you're assumed to be able to see over models in front of you. So I think this gave me hope that because this is how, again, if this game is about fan service, this kind of abstracted line of sight concept would speak to them a lot more than true line of sight. True line of sight was caused a lot of groans for people when they brought it, because it basically makes most tabletops just to shoot, just makes it as if there's nothing obstructing aside from other models. So you can see here, example, hills, buildings, and especially large boulders block line of sight over level ground. It's plainly impossible to see through an interposing hill. Wooded areas block line of sight through them if both shooter and target lie on opposite sides. So this is a way that line of sight, again, we don't know. But
obsessed. Obsessed with the orchards, though.
And copses.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure you actually can see through this orchard. You're like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but the doors are connected to the apples.
If this was how line of sight worked, would you be happy?
I would. I think my preference, and for everyone to have some context for this, I pretty much wrote a bunch of terrain rules for Age of Sigmar 3 when the game launched, and pretty much adopted universally worldwide. Every event pretty much runs something similar, or some abstraction of it, and effectively it's not too complicated. And this seems to have something similar, just a bunch of keywords. That's all I want is a bunch of keywords. Because what I want to do, and it's not because I want to be a tournament gamer, it's because I want to be a narrative gamer. I want to 3D print, I don't know, a bunch of buckets and a merchant selling some apples near a cart. And I want my dwarf cannon to just have a keyword. It's like, oh, this makes you -1 to hit or something when you go through it. But obviously this forest, but a forest resplendent with trees and boughs is very different to, a sickened wildwood that has been infected by chaos. And I would like
you mean like a copse?
Yeah, exactly like a copse. and I would like them to have both the same effect without me having to describe the physical manifestation of it, right? So keywords is what I'd like, and I'd like those keywords to interact in what makes very simple, because I want to have less conversations about it. I want to start the game with, if I draw a line through this, what happens, and then that's it. And I think that's so I would be keen if we see that, because terrain is one of those things where I really want more terrain on the board, because it looks awesome and it's cool, but there are, as I've discussed, limitations. Hills are a huge negative, especially for trays, because you would need the top to be very, very flat in some way, right, or it not be wonky. Because as we both know, a couple of inches movement left or right, and you get a very different game state. Charges are easier and a bunch of other stuff. So you want stuff that works mechanically. But then you can get around a lot of that by just giving it a bunch of silly words, and then we can abstract ourselves, and it looks awesome. And I love that. I want more of that if that's possible.
So yeah, and abstracted line of sight allows you to have abstracted terrain, so you can have more area terrain type thing set up. I don't know if you want to go in a game like this. You may genuinely want to go to something like, you know, the 2D terrain that just enables you to have like more interactions, more fun by, you know, designating a hill with a different colored piece of mat. We also have game mats now, which didn't exist before. By the way, if you haven't had the delight of sliding a regiment of troops on a tray over a mat, no. If gaming mats had existed in 2015 in a broad sense, this game would have lived. Damn it! Because it is so good. Like we could just be like those guys in the bunker with the friggin' sticks moving the stuff on the map.
Oh my god,
great.
So good. I remember, so obviously I live in Nottingham, so Warhammer World was my local and the only place I played. And the first time I ever went to an independent event, and there weren't mats because obviously it was England, and back in the day all we did was play on, for some reason, lime green sprayed pieces of wood.
Yes,
but even,
that was the ETC as well. Yeah.
But even that was such a heavenly change from the Realm of Battle boards where everything would just slip and slide down. And the Realm of Battle boards are specifically my PTSD. I hate hills.
Yes.
Yes. That's where that comes from.
That's because like the flat terrain on the, like there were 2 squares of the Realm of Battle board that had hills built into them. So like even if you weren't on the flat part of it, yeah. So it was a ludicrously bad design. It would look pretty though, but yeah, it was terrible. I bought those and sold them in rapid order, and the way they clatter when you roll dice on them, it goes from like the most delightful ASMR. This is also one of the reasons why I hate dice trays, is because in battle reports you lose the of the dice rolling. But anyway, so yeah, I think if I would love this. I really do think like the more abstracted your terrain is, the more you can actually use it. The less dependent it is on being like you see in 40K, where they are, you know, they are functional by being very tall and very opaque, and it blocks the game. You lose a lot of that, those really cool dynamic, you know, like views, the very cinematic feel of the game. You get that a lot more when you have abstracted terrain, I think, and still put terrain on the table. So a forest can have a base, and then you take the trees off, and then you're great. A hill, you know, maybe you just make sure you have a footprint for your hill, so that way you can, if you need to, take the hill off and still know what the friggin' thing is.
I think it's just going to have to be a hybrid system where each piece of terrain. So like I'll do a video in the future about how I do my terrain at the venue, especially for Age of Sigmar. But like I basically just use a piece of area terrain, and that area terrain has rule A or rule B or a couple of rules mixed onto it, and it's mainly don't stand on it basically. But if hills do give an advantage, or being in a forest is an advantage that you might want, you know, like wood elves might gain some advantage for being in a forest or near a forest, then yeah, you would have to produce a bunch of neoprene like flat pieces, and then you would build your physical. I mean, we're again, compared to 10 years ago, we're in an incredible place where I can have 3D designed a hill shape, and that the footprint of that will exactly match a neoprene mat that I could have printed as well. So I can have that duality really nicely, and I can create that for A, people playing at my venue, but B, for myself, and that's really positive. So I'd like to see that in the future. I think that'd be really good.
So the last thing mechanically that I just wanted to holler at from Ancient Battles, there's no reason for me to believe that this is a thing in fantasy whatsoever, but this is something that did not exist in fantasy. It didn't really exist in 40K. There were some special rules that let you do this, but this is disengaging. So leaving a combat that you're in without breaking and panicking and running away. That's just the whole thing. So this is a component, or a key component of the Ancient Battles rules. Certainly from a movement and I suspect combat perspective, Ancient Battles seems to have a lot in common with Old World, and I'll be curious to see if you're able to disengage from a combat, because disengaging eliminates a very annoying yet sort of critical element right now of fantasy, which is tar pitting units. So you take a very big, hard to like high wound density unit of plebes, or maybe a steam tank, stuff that isn't easily broken in combat, and you throw that into you know, the very expensive elite infantry of your opponent, and or cavalry or whatever it is, and they'll beat up those clan rats or those goblins or those halberdiers, but it's going to take them a long time, and they're not going to trade well in that matchup. So being able to disengage would allow you to get out of bad matchups and maybe maneuver around and get something better. And again, pure speculation as to whether or not this will be a thing, but I'm just saying I've never seen it. I'd never seen it in a fantasy game. Maybe someone can correct me on that. But previously, the only way out of combat that I know of is to either win or lose.
I would like to see disengage. I think being robbed of the choice feels like a mistake, and I think that would be really positive. Whether again, don't get my hopes up here. You've done a lot here in this kind of investigation, and thanks for doing it.
Blown it wide open.
Wide open. And again, I'll include the document for people. But you've got me really excited about some elements. Things that I really like the idea of specifically has to be disengaging. Terrain being more impactful but more sensible, but also the movement having, like, again, the being able to reform and charge. I remember, because when we just started talking about it then, a flash, a memory of something just like teleporting into my back lines and me being like, I'm never going to be able to fight that. It's going to take 5 turns or whatever it's going to take to deal with that. And that being a huge problem, and a really bad abstraction, because sure, like in normal war, turning about a big block of dudes is tough, but it's not impossible, and much more simple than we had in the 6 turns that we had in Warhammer Fantasy Battle Days. So that's really fun. And also interesting that they have lifted a bunch of ideas from another game system or an adjacent game system, I guess.
Yeah, and I think like I see hints to it. I didn't open it up and go look at it, but I've seen a lot of people talking to Fantasy Battles 4th edition, which is, I think, 4th and 5th. I think were very similar editions, and saying that they've been noticing some things from there. I think maybe Pushback was in there. I think Pushback is also something from the original Ancient Battles, which was a Jervis Johnson system from the 90s, probably actually very contemporaneous to that 4th, 5th edition Fantasy Battles. So I think what my biggest takeaway from this is that, like, you used a slur on 8th edition Fantasy that I reacted to, which is that it's very static. And after reading all of the options in Ancient Battles here, that again in a lot of cases have been alluded to in Old World previews, for changing your facing, maneuvering your troops. Everything can go to a skirmish formation, if they want to pass through difficult terrain and stuff like that. There's just a lot more ability to be nimble with your rank and file troops. And also, not all rank and file troops are the same. Open and closed order give different advantages to the style of ranks that you're using. If you're a turtled up, the Roman Legion style, Chaos Warrior style unit versus, the Barbarian Javelineers, the Barbarian Javelineers may still be in ranks, but they'll be probably open order and have some benefits to being nimble that the real hammers won't. So that to me just opens up so much cool stuff in my mind. Like, whether or not it's something that I'll ever be able to execute or use effectively on the table is different. But it takes what is a strength of fantasy, which is which was its movement phase, the ranking, the flanking, and giving it a lot more of the ability to do fun stuff with your units on the table. So a lot of this moaning that I've been seeing about, like, oh, the marching column is dumb because then I got to move all my models around and all that kind of stuff. I think we can figure that out as we go. But I think just the opportunities for different rules interactions, different unit types, being able to just do different movements and do surprising things, or you can come up with very creative combinations of moves, just makes the game seem a lot more interesting. We'll have to see how it plays, and if any of the stuff actually winds up being what it was in the past.
I think, yeah. So the criticism of static, you can kind of understand where I was coming from then. Do you think now, looking at the options available potentially here?
I guess what I'm saying is that it can. This to me provides the opportunity for a more dynamic game, which is, again, like less straight line. In fantasy, like in 8th edition, it feels very easy to get out of position and then very hard to get into position. And this rule set provides certain units a lot of options for getting into position, whether or not they were in or out of it in the first place. So that's to me, just like from an imagination perspective, and like looking forward to like potential gameplay. Like that's exciting to me. So I think a lot of people have been sort of about like some of the things that they've been hinting at, but if they're hinting at something that's a lot more crunchy with what you can do with your units in their formations, in how they can, again, change their facings, change their rank orders, all that kind of stuff, I think that's going to make it a more interesting game.
I think that is something that I missed from Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Like it's kind of like a retrospective. If I was to say to it, you're like, okay, a unit is this wide or that wide, like okay, but you didn't really have any, like there were no special formations or shapes or bonuses, like or orders or those other things that you could give them that really affected, like what they did. And I do love that because that opens up a huge, like you said, a unit of Chaos Warriors in an open formation might be very different to a unit of Chaos Warriors in like a closed formation, but also a unit of Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh might be much more effective in an open formation because of some other bonuses that they have.
Yeah.
And then, a unit of closed Chaos Warriors of Nurgle, much more defensive and blocky. And so, yeah, being able to stack them on could be very, very fun. We might be just doing a load of hopium and copium right now, but like it does sound very engaging. It doesn't sound impossible either because it's already there in another game.
It's already there in another game, and they've been literally referring to a lot of these rules. So we already know that units can quarter turn at the cost of 25% of their movement. That's something that they can do. Like we already know that there are countercharge mechanics. We already know that there's a pushback mechanic. So like just in those three that I rattled off right there, you are you're introducing mechanics that will allow you to adjust the positioning of your models and your units in ways that you just haven't been able to do in previous versions of Fantasy, or at least the version that I played, which is 8th edition. And I don't think 6th. I think 6th was simpler. So maybe going back to like a very much older feel for how things move on the table.
Oh my god, this is gonna be so fun. Like, it sounds really fun. I'm very excited. I really am. Even if I do have to look up a chart for rolling a 6, then a 4, then a 3, and then you roll a 2 and I re-roll it. I'm fine with that. That sounds pretty good. So yeah, have you got any plans leading up to next week, the next article? Have they said what the next article is going to be? I think
it'll be Close Combat.
Close Combat. Okay, so you will get to find out a lot if a lot of these predictions were true.
Yeah, some of them will be revealed. Mostly what we're going to find out about is, are we going to get Close Combat style from 8th edition, which is being able to fight in multiple ranks, so you get helpers from behind, and step up was a big deal. So basically, if someone hit you first and then your guys died, you were still able to swing back because it was assumed someone from behind the formation would step up to fight that fight. Previous editions did not do that. I see no reason to believe that step up would be in this game, because it is, again, one of those key changes in 8th that I think aggravated the base. So I suspect we're going to see much more front rank heavy combats, which will, again, the thing I'm really interested in to see is like, what is the mitigating factor of basically wide ranks? So like basically wide units aside from maneuverability. Because right now, like if you had units that could do that open order thing, which is being able to about face or quarter turn without penalty, you could be in a very wide unit formation, move up the table, do a quarter turn, shift over, do another quarter turn, and now you're facing, you've moved and you're facing the right direction and you're tremendously wide. So I'm just very curious to see how like the unit width is mitigated by rules, because super wide units could just be the thing that everyone does, and that kind of ruins it for me.
Well, we'll see.
It doesn't ruin it for me. That was hyperbolic. It doesn't ruin it for me. It's just like, what is the downside? What are the risks to being very wide?
We'll see. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Like I am. I'm getting more and more excited as time goes on. These articles aren't. I think I knew we probably wouldn't get the 40k strength and toughness thing. Like that's fine. And honestly, the weapon skill, ballistic skill thing, which ballistic skill looks a little like naff when you look at it for shooting, but when you get into combat, it does make sense. You know, like the best swordsman in the world versus the lowliest grot. It does start to make a lot more sense for close combat. Although I'll never forget, like like undefeatable melee lords in front ranks, just being like, oh god, and just being stuck in combat with them forever. So hopefully they get rid of that as well. That'd be fun. I do also like the idea of adding a bunch of crunchy special rules, like looking at that Screaming Skull catapult. That's very cool. So yeah, look like another fun week of stuff. As we lead in towards it. And I think, again, also breaking these down, I would say these articles have been broken down quite nicely. They've given us enough information, but not loads of information. They haven't felt overly selly. They've just been like, here's some stuff, which is quite interesting. And they have felt like love letters.
Yeah, and they've also had like some nice, like they've had a lot of Easter eggs, things that hint at a brighter picture, like I wouldn't have been able to speculate on Ancient Battles if it wasn't for the fact that they've named rules that they didn't explain. So yeah, like I really have enjoyed them. The shooting one was a little bit lighter than the other ones have been so far, but combat will probably be pretty crunchy, I would think, because you're going to see the mechanics from breaking and fleeing from it. We're going to probably see the hit chart. Combat is a very, very core mechanic, obviously, of old world and fantasy. So I'm curious to see. But I suspect what we're going to see is something that seems almost underwhelming from like a damage output potential perspective, is my assumption. It's because if it's limited to the front rank, unless there's a marked increase into how many attacks different units have. You're just not going to roll a ton of dice, and so the game becomes not just about how much damage you can do, but again, those other factors, those bonuses to combat. Do you have someone who's made it into the flank to give you that bonus? Do you have a standard bearer? Are you in closed formation? Possibly. Those things start to matter more than just raw damage, which again makes for not necessarily a better game, but just like a game that works differently and is interesting in a different level.
Okay, well, it's been fun. Thank you very much for doing the deep dive investigation. I hope everyone enjoyed the video so far, everyone watching live on Twitch. And if you watch it on the internet, on YouTube, and if you've listened to the podcast, then obviously you can like, subscribe, and all that other stuff, which helps support the show, which would be cool. And also just leave your thoughts. That's the most important part. Just leave your thoughts.
I will respond to you. Oh, we actually have to respond a little bit to our sign off before we go.
Of course, please. I'm excited for this.
I need to find it. I wrote it on a little sticky note somewhere. Yeah, there we go. So I think we had I got 3. One of them I think is a ChatGPT, but maybe not. We can find out. So we have at San Francisco.
This is our YouTube commenters, right?
These are YouTube commenters trying to give us a good sign off. We have San Francisco, Rob and Val squaring off. Okay. And then we got Bristle Boss 78. Now Bristle Boss immediately says that they like if you're going to be there, you better be square for the sign off. But they then ramble off some suggestions. And I think there's some good ones in here. If it ain't square, then we don't care. Wherever you are, don't forget to rank and spank. My personal favorite, flank you and good night. Get a square base in your place. We've been a flare for the square. Show some flair on your square. Don't hang around, hang square. And get good, get squared, scrub. That's not bad. And then finally, this one got a lot of thumbs up from Anton Yap 8597, a reply to the post I put up, which was square base coming at the old world from all the right angles. Anyone who thinks it goes too far is obtuse.
I like that there are oblongs in the game, but we just don't talk about it. Like, it's just not a mention. I like what Neural Shock Dubs said in the chat. This ain't the end time, so we'll see you next week. That's great. Leading to the obviously tragic 8 years into the show final episode where we say this has been the end times and good night.
We got hundreds of years of narrative runway to get to before we're in the end times.
That's pretty good. Flank you and good night is good. I'm going to end there. Val, thanks for hanging out and talking. It's been great. You can check us all out next week. And
I just really do want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you everyone so much for watching and commenting and saying nice words to me and about Rob. Both of us, in fact, on various social medias. Means the world. This is ultimately a passion project, despite the very fancy crown I started this episode with. You know, we're just super nerds who are really excited about this. So thanks for also being super nerds, really excited about this. And yeah, keep commenting. I've been having such a blast responding in the comments. And whatever you do, do not share this in the Warhammer the Old World Facebook group. Okay, I can't stress that enough.
Why don't we just make our own group? Why is it your like pernicious? Like, why are you so obsessed with being in a group of people who are annoying? Like, what's your goal?
Well, because not all of them are annoying, frankly. There's as with all of the Facebook groups, there's probably a very small minority that are that have what I call bad takes and bad opinions. Most of them are having a good time and are excited like we are. And there's also 42,000 of them. So we've got almost 1,000 subs, but I think we got a little room to convince them to get square based.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're on a mission from God, is what you're saying.
We're spreading the gospel.
Oh my God, we're on a mission from God to change 42,000 people's minds. It's going to be okay. I'm ready. So flank you, and
good night.